You ever have that moment when someone walks into your life and immediately tries to control it, thinking they hold all the power? That's exactly what happened when HOA Karen marched up my driveway last Saturday morning, clipboard in hand, looking like she had just declared war on my weekend plans. And trust me, this wasn't going to be your average complaint about grass length or mailbox colors. No, this was personal. She had her sights set on my BBQ. I had spent the last week prepping my backyard for what was supposed to be the biggest neighborhood cookout of the summer. Smokehouse ribs, homemade burgers, a full cooler of craft beers. The works. My friends were on their way, the grill was fired up, and the smell of smoky mesquite filled the air. And then came the knock, loud, commanding, and irritatingly persistent. I opened the door to see Karen standing there, a permanent scowl etched across her face. "You can't have a BBQ here," she declared like she owned the street. The HOA rules clearly state that open flames over a certain size are prohibited. She waved her clipboard like a weapon, quoting some obscure paragraph that probably had been forgotten by everyone but her. Most people would panic. Most people would apologize, shut the grill, and quietly watch their weekend go up in smoke. But here's the kicker. She had no idea who she was dealing with. See, I'm a firefighter. Not just any firefighter. I'm the kind who has stared into raging flames and walked out covered in soot, knowing exactly how to handle heat, smoke, and stubborn threats. And this wasn't a fire I was going to back down from. I smiled, casually wiping my hands on my apron, and said, "You know, Karen, I actually handle fires for a living. I think I can manage a little backyard smoke." Her eyes narrowed. She probably expected me to cave, to look intimidated by her tiny badge of authority, but instead, she saw the calm confidence of someone who literally stared down danger for a living. That's when things escalated. She leaned in closer, pointing at my grill like she could physically shut it down herself. "I'm telling you, if you light that fire, there will be consequences," she hissed. The neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, sensing the showdown about to erupt. I took a deep breath, inhaling the aroma of the perfectly seared steaks, and calmly replied, "Karen, you need to step back. This is my property, and I know what I'm doing." She gasped as if I had just sworn in the middle of church. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. What she didn't realize was that I had more than fire on my side. I had experience, strategy, and the patience of someone who knew exactly how to turn a small backyard skirmish into a lesson in humility. Karen wasn't going to back down. In fact, she seemed to thrive on confrontation, like she lived for the power trips the HOA gave her. She stepped closer, clipboard held high, as if it could magically enforce her will over the sizzling grill. "I don't care if you're a firefighter," she snapped. "Rules are rules. If you light that BBQ, I will file a formal complaint, and you'll be fined immediately." I took a step back, keeping my tone calm, almost conversational. "Karen, I respect rules, but rules don't replace common sense. This grill isn't some uncontrolled wildfire. It's under supervision, on my property, and handled by someone trained to manage fires safely." She squinted at me like I had grown a second head. "Trained? This isn't about training. It's about following the HOA's regulations. You're putting the neighborhood at risk." At that moment, the first neighbor wandered over, curious. "Is she serious?" I heard him mutter to another. Karen turned to glare at him, her face twisting in frustration. It was obvious she had no idea her audience was watching. And that was when I decided to shift gears. I walked over to the grill, opened the lid, and let a small burst of smoke rise in the air. The smell of mesquite and sizzling meat enveloped the yard. "See, Karen," I said with a calm smile, "controlled fire. No risk, just preparation for a weekend everyone will enjoy." Her jaw tightened. She waved her clipboard again. "I'm calling the board right now," she yelled. But as she reached for her phone, I noticed a tiny spark of hesitation in her eyes. She knew my profession. She saw the confidence in my movements. And, most importantly, she realized she couldn't intimidate me with rules alone. But Karen, being Karen, wasn't about to admit defeat. She stood her ground, trying to create drama, hoping I would make a mistake. That's when I decided it was time to turn the situation into a subtle but firm lesson. I invited her to step a few feet back, explaining basic fire safety precautions, and then casually mentioned, "You know, if anyone here tried to start a fire without knowing what they're doing, I'd be the first one to stop it." Her expression flickered between disbelief and begrudging respect. The neighbors were whispering, trying not to laugh, sensing the absurdity of her rigid enforcement against a trained firefighter. She realized she was no longer in control, and for the first time she hesitated. That hesitation was all I needed. Karen had underestimated me from the start, thinking this was just another HOA complaint she could bully through. But she had no idea she was dealing with someone who understood fire in every sense. Not just flames, but the human reactions, the heat of conflict, and how to keep things under control. The showdown was far from over, and the backyard was about to become the stage for Karen's most dramatic defeat yet. By now, the tension in the yard was thick enough to cut with a spatula. Karen had positioned herself like a general preparing for battle, clipboard clutched tightly, and every fiber of her being dedicated to shutting down my BBQ. Meanwhile, the smell of smoked ribs and grilled vegetables wafted through the neighborhood, drawing more curious eyes. People had started peeking from their windows, and I could see their amusement building as Karen's dramatic performance unfolded. She took a step closer, trying to assert her authority. "I'm serious," she shouted, her voice shaking just slightly. "If you ignite that grill, I will have you fined. And I'll make sure the HOA enforces it immediately." I leaned against the counter with a calm smile. "Karen, I'm a firefighter. I know what I'm doing, and everyone here sees it. You can threaten me with fines, but you can't threaten common sense, safety, or experience." Her eyes widened. She clearly didn't know how to respond. This was the problem with people like Karen. They assumed rules gave them invincible power, forgetting that some of us don't need authority to protect what's ours. I could feel the momentum shifting. I decided it was time to escalate, but strategically. I gestured to my friends who were already arriving with drinks and side dishes. "Everyone, let's get this BBQ started," I announced. Flames licked the grill, and smoke spiraled into the sky, perfectly controlled. Karen gasped as the sight hit her. She tried to storm forward but stopped abruptly when I calmly said, "Step back. Karen, you're making this dangerous for yourself, not me." The irony wasn't lost on the crowd. Karen was panicking over a controlled fire in the hands of a trained professional, while everyone else could see she was completely out of her depth. The neighbors started cheering quietly, some even clapping, as the aroma of cooking food overcame her protests. She flailed a little, trying to regain control, but it was like watching someone fight against physics, hopeless and ridiculous. I decided to finish the lesson. I grabbed a fire extinguisher, not because it was needed, but to show that I was always prepared. I demonstrated proper safety techniques while explaining to the neighbors how to handle small backyard fires responsibly. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She was speechless, humiliated, and, for once, powerless. It was clear she hadn't anticipated this outcome. She had underestimated not just my skills, but my patience, my ability to command a crowd, and my understanding of fire and safety. In trying to control me, she had set herself up for public embarrassment, and the BBQ had just begun. The smoke swirled, the grill sizzled, and Karen realized she wasn't going to win this battle. But little did she know, the most embarrassing moment of her HOA career was still about to come. This backyard showdown began. Karen's confidence had completely evaporated. The neighbors were fully invested now, some leaning on fences, others peeking through blinds, all silently rooting for common sense and a perfectly cooked BBQ to triumph. Karen, meanwhile, was flustered, flapping her clipboard like it could magically summon authority. I walked over to the grill, tongs in hand, and turned a burger with precise control. The smell of sizzling meat filled the air, and the faint hiss of vegetables hitting the hot grill added a satisfying rhythm. "Karen," I said calmly, This is what controlled fire looks like. You might want to watch. It's quite the skill. Her eyes narrowed. I don't need to watch. I'm telling you, this is illegal under HOA rules. You're endangering everyone here. I chuckled, a low, confident sound that drew more smiles from the crowd. You know, Karen, sometimes people forget that rules exist to protect, not to intimidate. And sometimes the people enforcing them forget that context matters. She blinked, clearly unprepared for an argument delivered so calmly, yet effectively. Her voice wavered. I have to. She trailed off, realizing her threats were losing their power. The neighborhood was witnessing her meltdown, and I could see the embarrassment creeping in. At that moment, I invited the neighbors to grab plates and start enjoying the food. The aroma, the laughter, the casual chatter. It was the perfect counterattack to Karen's rigidity. She tried one last time, waving her clipboard and attempting to rally some authority. I'll make sure— Karen, I interrupted softly but firmly, you don't need to make sure of anything. Everything here is safe, and everyone's having a great time. You can either join in or step aside. Her face flushed, and she finally stepped back. It was a subtle retreat, but it was a victory. The crowd erupted in quiet applause, some clapping for the perfectly grilled food, some for the sheer audacity of standing up to an overbearing HOA tyrant. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The grill hissed, the smoke spiraled, and the neighborhood relaxed into the rhythm of a summer BBQ done right. Karen's last attempts at intimidation had completely collapsed under the weight of expertise, calm confidence, and a community that appreciated real leadership. By the end of the afternoon, Karen had quietly disappeared, clipboard in hand, leaving behind only whispers of frustration. Meanwhile, the backyard was alive with laughter, food, and smoke signals that said, "You can't intimidate someone who knows how to handle fire," literally and figuratively. The lesson was clear. Rules are only as powerful as the people enforcing them. And underestimating someone with skill, experience, and patience can backfire spectacularly. Today, the BBQ won. Karen lost. And I got to enjoy every perfectly grilled bite. If you loved seeing me handle HOA Karen like a pro, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a wild neighborhood showdown. Drop a comment below, telling me what you would have done in my place. And give this video a like if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved.